as we get started, I wanted to go ahead and invite all of you as participants to go ahead and say hello to Michael as we're getting ready. Go into the chat maybe, share your name, your organization, and if you'd like to come off of your, open up your video so we can actually wave at you and say hello and a big greeting today. It's going to be a very exciting session, and we are very thankful to have Michael with us. So please do come onto the chat, say hello, and throughout today's session, and I would encourage you to chat with each other, share your perspectives, do a big shout out for the key concepts that you're hearing from Michael that you'd like to take back to your own organization. So again, welcome to Bridge Innovate's Inspire series, designed for, with, and by Evolving Design with Michael Baskin. Let's get going. Thank you, Maura, for saying hello. Glad to have you here. So this is a part of Bridge Innovate's Inspire series. We are thankful that leaders around the world share their inspiring stories of innovation, change, and leadership as we encounter great complexity in the business and government sectors today. We are thankful for their inspiring stories and how we can take those lessons learned back to our organization. So welcome to the Inspire series. Let's keep going. Today's speaker is Michael Baskin. He is the Chief Innovation Officer of Montgomery County Government. Michael and I had the opportunity to meet when he was Chief Innovation Officer here in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area. He is certainly a well-known and very famous innovator in his own right in his sector. He comes with a background and from Harvard, and he also has done a stint with a major corporate, and then coming into the government sector to really bring all of his innovation capacity to help people make better use of things. And so we are thankful to have Michael with us today to share his perspective on innovation. And I'll, from here, turn it over to Michael and say, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jenny. And nice to see so many folks here in the room with us together. So we're going to start off with something we call impromptu connecting. Let's see how it goes. It's always a bit of an experiment. And an organization I respect is, and I'd like to share with the world, because today we're going to design a little bit of this session together. So you're going to find yourself in a breakout room with one other person. An organization I respect is, and I'd like to share with the world, and we'll be back together in just 3 minutes. Awesome. Welcome. So glad folks get a chance to get to know each other. That's what we call a liberating structure. And we do them as a way to connect with each other and with ourselves and be able to shape different sessions together. And so part of it is how do we design each session in such a way that includes and unleashes everybody. So a good opportunity to say hello. My name is Michael. I come from Montgomery County, Maryland, although as Jenny mentioned, used to be in Chattanooga with Maura and some others here. Working for the mayor in Chattanooga. And in Montgomery County Government, we're working towards a just and liberating and human government. We move from an efficient, effective, and equitable government towards a just, liberating, and human government. And our role in innovation is simply to change behavior. We've got an amazing team of designers here, both people who are full-time designers, as well as we have a Design by People fellowship. And today I want to talk a little bit about what we're trying to do with design and to evolve design. We're gonna go into the past a little bit here. And so I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the past isn't always pretty, and acknowledge there might be some potential triggers in the presentation. And it's helpful to know. So if you need to shut off your screen or step away from your computer, always welcome to do so. And so when we talk about design, a lot of design in the past has been designed for, right? So that's designers come in, they are going to listen and interpret and understand, and then try to design better solutions, putting the human at the center, but designing for or on behalf of those who are impacted. And that's powerful. It's important. Like, we are trying to bring design into government, because we in government and the public sector, we know that our systems and our processes are failing, that our democracy depends on delivery, and that we are quite simply not delivering up to resident expectations. And we join as designers a long history of those trying to make things better. And we're taking then some private sector tools and we're moving them into the public sector. But those private sector tools have values. They've been imbued with values, whether they're performance stat values or different design values. And I've been a part of bringing in this faster, better, smarter, stronger tools into government. But if each tool is imbued with values and our well-intentioned rush to adopt many of these tools, we begin to ask ourselves how we might adapt these tools to public sector values of justice. And in Montgomery County, we sort of hold that the best people to fix processes and to fix systems are the people in those processes and in those systems. And so as designers and public sector designers, we ask how we might recognize that we're part of a larger history of reform that many well-meaning folks have been a part of and yet have often done really unintentional and terrible harm. And so we want to sort of root in that history, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So we can learn from those who came before as we move towards. So there's this move from design for, and many of you are familiar with this move from design for to design with for customers, and then moving towards designing with users. And we're going to go root in that history and then think about how we might design better by. So for customers, this is a picture from Boston during urban renewal, right? This is before the big dig, the central artery tunnel, so that we ripped through neighborhoods because we thought that people needed cars as a way of getting through, and they need these big central artery tunnels, these big highways to rip through their cities so that people could move through and move around. But it ripped the fabric of neighborhoods apart. And sometimes on purpose, doing some pretty significant damage to communities of color. On the right-hand side there is Orlando, where we literally used highways, right? We're designing for people, not with them, and we used highways to rip cities apart. Highways not as a way of moving people through, but as walls to separate neighborhoods from each other. And we were looking from this scale down upon the small people below. This is from the neighborhood that I grew up in Alston, Brighton. This is Barry's Corner, where from the top it looked like slums. And so we designed for customers. We said people don't want slums. And so we cleared those slums out. But for many people who are living those slums, those were rich and vibrant communities and neighborhoods. And it comes to this idea that I'm borrowing from James C. Scott, which is this idea of legibility. So you see a rich and abundant forest on one side, but it's really hard to count. It's hard to know what's there. And on the right-hand side, you see these perfect lines of trees. On the one hand, you have something that is totally illegible, but is natural, and robust and thriving and adaptive and resilient. On the right hand, you see what happens when experts do something for someone. So it is what we can see, it is what we can measure, it is what we can engineer. But at the end, all of these trees are really easy to knock down. And this is pervaded as we've taken over and over again many tools from the private sector into the public sector. We've got Robert McNamara here during the Vietnam War, right, with a going by numbers. And so we looked at kill rate, and that's how we measured our successes. And how we were measuring our success was shaping the actions that we took, and continues to this day, right? So this is designing for others. Yet there has always been resistance to that. This is Martin O'Malley and City Stat, right? And so in many ways, we then began adopting this sort of the stuff at the national level down to the city and to the local level. And these were like really wonderful steps forward, right? So here we are looking at the actual numbers, looking at the data to figure out how we can drive things better for customers. And this had a lot of amazing impacts, right? We really were able to fill potholes in a much faster way. And it's been replicated, and we were able to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. But at the same time, there is so much when you design for others that wasn't visible. And so along with cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay faster, and along with filling potholes faster, we also incarcerated an unconscionable number of Black youth in the cities. And those beautiful urban renewal towers that we built, this is Prude Igoe in St. Louis. We built buildings for people rather than with them. And little do we, so we measure by the numbers, we try to get as many housing units up as possible. When we built for customers, it didn't actually suit the people who want to live in those buildings. And these buildings were so unsuccessful, the housing so unsuccessful, that just a couple of years later, they demolished the Prude Igoe housing projects. So we think about power on its three faces. The first face of power being who decides, the second face of power being what and who is at the table, and the third face of power being who benefits. And we're designing for the who decides resides in those technocrats. And so we started to move towards with users. Here, like they've gotten out, there's another public meeting, but here we've gotten out from behind the podium. We're beginning to engage with folks. We're designing the Rose Kennedy Greenway in Boston, which replaced that highway, and we bring people in to together design with us what might fill that space. And so we're excited. Ooh, designers are great. This is the city of Boston, where the design team there said, listen, we need to be bringing City Hall out to where people actually are. And so they put Boston City Hall in a food truck and they bring it out. But designers also then interpreters, right? Designers are storytellers, which means that they are shaping the story for others. They're translators, which means they translate, which is beautiful, right? You're translating for those being impacted. You're bringing them into the room, but at some point we have to ask whether we are asking people to come to our table. Design with says we're going to go to your table, but at some point we have to ask whether that people actually want to be sitting at a table at all. And so we're saying, come draw on this canvas, but maybe they want to be playing the trumpet. And so we see that designers, when we're designing with, is a step in this right direction, but it's part of just an evolution because we are still shapers and facilitators, and we still hold on that second face of power. And so when we move from design for to design with, design by, it's about recognizing the power that people who are being impacted have, recognizing them as full people, and then beginning to create together. There's a quote that inspires me from Marshall Gans. He says, charity asks what's wrong, how can I help? And justice asks, why is it happening? And how can I change it? And so as designers, we want to begin to change the systems. I want to recognize that we're building on a lot of those who have gone before us, folks in the Creative Reaction Lab and Equity by Design here in DC, Liberated for Design out on the West Coast, and the Design for Justice Network around the country. And we know that we are beginning to see action taken by citizens. So we're beginning to see this in bits and cracks along the way. This is in Dallas, where people took over their blocks and reimagined what their city blocks could be rather than being for cars. This is from Chattanooga, where rather than designing in the past, we would do government for young people. And then we said we want to bring with young people. And so we designed a mayor's youth council for them. We decided that didn't work. And so here you've got folks from Chattanooga, young people from Chattanooga, designing their own platform for youth voice in the city. They designed the roles, they designed how the youth council would operate, and they were designing their own platform for voice. This is the Mayor's Youth Council in Boston, which is how I got my start in local government, where the youth council there spends $1 million. It is run by and for young people. The young people in the city of Boston are trusted with $1 million that they pull together. They design the projects, they vote on the projects, and the power is theirs. Here's another design by project. This is Formapalooza in in Washington, DC, where you see both local government public servants, the owners of the form, with the people who are filling out those forms, coming together to redesign the forms to better work for both of them. This is their Transform project with Formapalooza. In San Francisco, we see hope happening. This is where folks from other companies, so this is folks from Google, who came and said, rather than just giving my money, right, or asking or serving on an advisory board, and then you can design for me, we're going to donate our skills and our time with this program called Civic Bridge to partner and be a part, to step right in with government and design together. So here we're seeing more design by across the country. In the left-hand corner, you see Anna Chung. She's a designer who was living here. And she said, rather than serving on an advisory board, she joined in, and she joined with our 3-in-1 team with Supreet and Bianca, Chris and Brian from our 3-in-1 team, and they redesigned an aspect they brought more plain language in. They did some design research, but they were doing the research on themselves with each other rather than having someone go and interpret for them. And so we're beginning to see these tiny little seed bombs, these cracks in the pavement, filling potholes in different ways, where we bring more people together to imagine a better future. We're going to do a liberating structure here. Let's see how many folks we have in the room. And so the way that got 12 folks. So with 12 folks, we're going to skip this one. There's a wonderful one of 1, 2, 4 all, which allows us to reflect together. So we've got a moment to reflect silently, to reflect in pairs. The pairs come together to reflect in fours, and we reflect as a group. But I'm going to pause here because we have an intimate enough group to pause in that presentation, close this down, and open myself up for questions or comments or your thoughts and feelings about what you've seen, the move from design for to design with to design by, and design in the public sector space. And it'll be helpful to know, just dropping in the chat, whether we have designers in this room, public sector folks in this room, or sort of citizens, residents who are just interested in this room. So I'd love to know in the chat what brings you here, and then take questions.
I'll jump in, Michael. Thank you. How inspiring. I think that you open up, you make it feel natural to engage with the user so directly in terms of designing these solutions. And while intellectually it seems so simple, why is it so hard to do this? And what tips can you give us about really mobilizing design with customers and with users?
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I think the hard thing is, like, when we are facilitating, we're often the ones holding on to the marker, right? And so if Jenny's throwing out an idea, or Maura is throwing out an idea, or Noah or Melissa are throwing out ideas, we like to take those ideas and we like to be the ones who are holding the marker and writing those markers, those ideas up on the board. And in that moment, right, I'm taking Jenny, I'm taking what you just said, and I'm rewording it in slight ways to begin to shape that agenda. And what's really, really hard, and like that's a powerful role that we play as facilitators, where we are subtly shaping that agenda to achieve a goal. And what really makes this difficult is, I think, when we're moving from design with to design by, is we're giving up that marker. And so when Jenny has an idea, then it's Jenny's responsibility to take that marker and to go and write write up their own idea. And when they do that, Jenny, then Jenny, as the person who wrote it, it is your idea and you own it, and you continue to have responsibility for moving it forward. And so it's about letting go of control in order to build power. And that can be a really hard and troubling thing, because often it fails. And that can be scary. Cool. We've got some folks who are design students, and it looks like, and who are looking at design in public education. And we have Maura here, who is with the Nashville Public Schools, but she's probably not here in her Nashville Public Schools, Nashville-Davidson County Public Schools hat. What are the things that you're thinking about as students that you're sort of being challenged with as you think about bringing design into the public sector, whether it's in public education, or you're an MPP who's bringing design about?
Michael, perhaps I could jump in and go a little bit different direction if that's okay.
Go for it. Yeah.
So I'm Noah Downer with Bridge Innovate. Michael, before Bridge, I worked for the city of Atlanta for almost 10 years, mostly in international affairs roles and promoting economic development. What do you think is the best way to convince leaders, whether it's mayors, city councils, to implement this? Let's just say at the city of Atlanta, what are the talking points? What's the strategy? I mean, because this seems like the biggest no-brainer. You think about all the significant community impact programs we have here in Atlanta, and the design thinking process would be incredibly helpful for us.
Yeah, Noah. So the design for with by is like some for people who are sort of deep in the design world, right? But for just bringing design in, we find it to be really helpful to tell stories of successes elsewhere, or to show where design is already happening in the community. So Anna, with that Design by People fellowship that she did here, we're having a lot of trouble because probably just like Atlanta, our through and one call number was swamped. And so in your traditional Atlanta STAT program, which the innovation team there set up now like 7-8 years ago, right? You look at those numbers and you try to figure out what can we do to drive them down. And what we saw in Montgomery County with those numbers was a lot of the numbers were being driven by people who were asking for recycling bins. And they were calling into 3-in-1 to ask for recycling bins. But when Anna and the designers went and talked to people who were calling in for recycling bins, what they found is those people didn't want to be calling in the first place. They felt like very tech savvy folks, but what we had on our website was to request a 22-gallon bin. And so we were missing the language that people were actually using. And so simply by listening, right? So the fact that we had really long wait times means that people who needed vital assistance, like rental assistance, like figuring out what was going on with COVID, weren't getting through because the lines were clogged up with folks who were trying to get recycling bins. But if you went on our website, right? When most people, when you go on our website to go find recycling bins, you found requests for 22-gallon bins. No one knows what a 22-gallon bin. So what do? You pick up the call, you pick up a 3-on-1. So in a traditional process improvement versus a design method, in a process improvement method, that call starts, that issue starts, Noah, with someone calling in, and James calls into 3-on-1. But actually, we know when we bring a human-centered approach that starts with James realizing, oh, his recycling bin is broken, or his partner saying, hey, James, you got to go fix our recycling bin, and him Googling, need a new recycling bin. And when you start there, you realize there's better points for intervening upstream, which can save a lot of time and resources downstream for government. So I think it's really helpful to be able to share those stories. And often that resonates with people who are in political power because they've done that. They've gotten to political power by listening and working side by side with communities. And so it's that perspective shift of helping more people who are in government bureaucracy situations to be able to go and actually listen and hear with the people.
Michael, I'll hop in.
Hey, Maura.
Hi. So I think that one thing that's incredibly hard about bringing people together is twofold. Two things that is incredibly hard, that are incredibly hard. One, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of people, a lot of your staff. You've got to figure out when is the best time, where's the best place, where to meet people where they are. And then you go through all this and you have the meeting and 5 people come. And so that's disheartening for your employees, your public sector employees. And it so then your public sector employees feel like they've lost trust with the community. They don't trust that the community will give them the feedback they want. So then it's, then you get public sector employees who do that down. Well, we're just going to launch it out there since nobody will come to our meeting, right? And then of course there's the other side of that the 5 people who do come, or if you do have 500 people come and voice their opinion on a really big issue, then if you go the other way, that tension is if you go the other way from what anybody wrote down on their sticky note, then you've lost trust with that community member. So they're never going to come and give you their opinion again because you went the other way. So it's a really tension-filled proposition, and it's hard to navigate. And particularly as public sector person, it's been harder and harder to get people to community members to come and participate because even before COVID, right? Because it's just harder to find ways to reach people. Nobody has a home phone number anymore. Or they, how do you find people? You put it out on social media, but only some people who have that social media account. So anyway, just all of those things make this very tension filled, but it is such fruitful work and has to happen, but we just have to keep fighting the good fight and finding ways to connect with people to do this type of bottom up leadership.
Yeah, totally, Maura. And I think when traditional civic engagement methods, right, often advantage those who can show up during lunch break and don't need childcare. And it can be really exhausting for city and county employees to then go show up on Saturday at noon, which is when they were supposed to be with their families. And so a design approach says that one way is to go listen to a lot of input, as if that input would shape the way that we rebuild forms, would shape the way that we build services. And a design approach would say, yes, and let's go and let's actually watch people filling out those forms. Let's observe them in their processes, or let's take a representative sample and go deeply interview them and then build some personas around those folks and put those people at the center so that you're not fighting, right? We often will let that civic engagement go to others, and we'll just read the report in local gov. And we can then be able to put those people's voices with some personas and watching their whole user journey map across multiple stages of government. So rather than fighting one department against another, we're thinking about that person at the center and their full journey. And we can do that with, while it's helpful to go present these at larger public meetings, which can be a struggle as you bring up, Maura, from a design perspective, we can go and find, interview 15, 20 people, and that often gives us enough of a rich and thick understanding, that thicker data, to go and design on their behalf. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Mar.
Michael, thanks for your presentation. One of the things that actually, I'm in the private sector, so I have maybe wondering like how that relates to what you're sharing to private sector. But I think what you shared earlier about being able to storytell really resonated with me. Just actually last week, I was in all these meetings pitching to a client on a huge deal, almost $1 billion. So it's a big deal for us. And one of the key things that we did was try to tell the story using case studies and examples of best practices like you shared. And what we had a hard time with is the client kept asking, that's great, you're a subject matter expert, so you're able to share all these case studies, but tell us how this relates to us. Like, what does this mean to us? And I think that's the same for public sector as well. It's one thing to share all these cases of how it went well, but often I find that even in private sector, even for a really established firm, to really tell that story of what this means to you. And I think often designers do a really great job of connecting the dots. So I really appreciated you talking about kind of the importance of storytelling there.
Cool. Thanks, Mary Kim. Yeah, it's really tough to connect those stories to the impact that people need. So we tell a story a lot about form we designed here with our Recreation Assist program. And like, it's this lovely design story, but they didn't come and ask for design. They came and they said that we have $800,000 that we give to families in need, and we're only spending 80% of it. And the reason, we didn't know why, but we found that moms were coming on 2 buses with their kids to fill out a form. And when they filled out the form and they left, they'd only find out 2 weeks later that they weren't actually eligible because we had a big box that said birth date. And so people would put in 10/25 instead of 10/25/1971. They just didn't know that last piece was necessary. And so simply by changing that form to have the dashes for the months and the dates and the years, like really, really small tweaks, it allows us to increase the number of people. So you have that story of that mom and showing up with the child. And that's really powerful, Mary Kim. But you also have to be able to make sure that you're connecting to what the client needs, which is, hey, we've got this problem, which was we've got $200,000 a year that's not being used for parents in need, and we want to increase that amount. So yeah, it's a mix of storytelling with that quantitative. Thanks for sharing your story, Mary.
How exciting. I mean, Michael, thank you so much for a powerful presentation today. I think you've inspired all of us to think about how we engage with the public sector differently and engage with users. So thank you so much for all that. I hope you'll come back and tell us more about the wonderful work that you're doing in the government sector. We have more coming up with Bridge Innovate on our Inspire series. Project Return, a new nonprofit into the Chattanooga area coming from Nashville, tells their innovation story of their nonprofit success and changing lives for people coming out of incarceration. We also have US Express sharing a story around democratizing automation and their participation with our Foresight Scouts program. And then, of course, kids have power in design. We're so excited about our Bright Spark Design Challenge, the future of home. We have over 70 submissions. You can go on now to Bridge Innovate /Bright Spark and vote your favorite design submitted by students from all over the world, 4th grade through 12th grade. And then, of course, we'll have the awards program coming up November the 18th. And then our final program for the year, December 2nd, Innovation for Good, a leadership mingle of all of the leaders who've contributed to the innovation contributions of this year's Inspire series. So join us again soon. We hope to see you at this program or in any other ways at Bridge Innovate. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.